This is a reprise of the presentation I made at the Noise Floor Festival in June 2024 in Lisbon, Portugal. I'm making it because it will give listeners the opportunity to hear the musical examples that help explain the concepts I described. The fact that a collection of harmonically related frequencies is perceived as a single tone is a rich source for musical invention. Most of our ideas about timbre come from musical instruments, which produce a very limited range of timbral possibilities. Since most people are familiar with musical instruments, I will concentrate on how harmonic spectra can be structured in electroacoustic music. I will also show how individual overtones can be used as compositional elements. In this presentation, I will reprise some of the points I have made in other lectures and articles, but it will also introduce a few newer ideas. All of the examples are taken from my composition Harmonic Fantasy number 7. Spectra. Most of the sounds that we hear in music are not the single tones that we hear as pitches, but consist of many different tones that merge into a single entity. Those different tones constitute the spectrum of the sounds, something that we usually perceive as the tone quality or timbre. We can't really speak of structuring them in instrumental or vocal music. Electroacoustic music is the first music that allows such a possibility. Musical harmony books usually illustrate the overtone series in a chart like Figure 1, which shows the closest pitches to the first 16 partials of C2. To be sure, these overtones are not exactly the same as their tempered pitches. In order to clarify the extent to which they are out of tune, I need to introduce the octave point pitch class system, or 8VE point PC system of notating pitches, which is used in C sound and other synthesis programs. The pitch of middle C is near the frequency of 2 to the 8 or 256 Hertz, and the frequencies of the tempered scale can be generated by raising 2 to the power of the octave plus n divided by 12, where n is the semitone above C that you want. The result is then multiplied by 1.0219749, bringing the A above middle C to 440 Hertz, which is the international standard. Some European countries use a slightly higher frequency like 444 Hertz. In 8VE point PC, the pitch of middle C is 8.00 and each successive semitone is raised by 0.01. A440 would thus be 8.09. C above middle C would be 9.00, and the value 8.12 would also work. The lowest note on the piano would be 4.09 and the highest note 12.00. Fractions of semitones are possible, such that 8.005 would denote a quarter tone between C and C sharp. The main difference between 8VE point PC and the usual notation is that the octaves are numbered 4 higher, but this has the advantage that it provides a notation for subsonic and supersonic frequencies. This notation also works for intervals, where 1.00 would represent an octave and 2.07 would mean 2 octaves and a fifth. Now we can get a pretty good idea of where the partials lie in relation to the tempered scale. Figure 2 shows in 8VE point PC notation the interval above the fundamental where the first 32 harmonic partials lie. A summary is shown in Figure 3. Octaves are perfectly in tune, and the perfect fifths, 3rd, 6th, 12th, and 24th, and the major seconds, 9th and 18th partials, and the minor third, 19th partial, are 2%, 4%, and 2% apart from the equal tempered pitches. The major thirds, 5th, 10th, and 20th partials, are 14% flat, and the perfect fourth, 21st partial, is 29% flat. The minor sevenths, 7th, 14th, and 28th partials, are 31% flat, and the major sevenths, 15th and 30th partials, are 12% flat. The minor 6th, 25th partial is 27% flat, and the major 6th is 6% sharp. These are also within 1/10 of a semitone of their tempered counterparts. The one that is most out of tune is the tritone, 6 semitones above the note. The 11th and 22nd partials being about halfway above the perfect fourth, 49% flat, and the 23rd is 28% sharp. This is one of the reasons why this note was so out of tune in medieval instruments, which were tuned by ratios, and the interval was referred to as the devil in music. Partials above the 30 seconds certainly exist, but they are very close together, and they are over 5 octaves above the fundamental. But if we are willing to go there, the 45th partial is only 1% flat from the tritone, and the 57th is less than 1% from the major 7th. These are not really usable. Also, when we consider the timbres of musical instruments, very seldom are partials this high taken into account, although they exist, and sometimes they can go higher than human hearing, in which case other interesting things may happen. Two of the most important issues when dealing with overtones in music are hearing the individual overtones and the emergence of the fundamental. Both of these are mostly irrelevant when considering instrumental or vocal music. There is a technique of singing vocal harmonics which is used in Tibetan chant and in Stockhausen's composition Stimmung, and which has been used by a few others such as David Hike's harmonic choir. Learning this technique requires several months of training, and singers are not usually taught in this way, but it shows that singers can learn to become aware of harmonics and to sing them in music. When learning to play musical instruments, players are taught how to produce the pitch, which affirms that the fundamental is always present. But these facts are not always evident in electroacoustic music. Overtone melodies and harmonies. While they are out of tune with respect to equal temperament, the intervals of the overtone series can be used to make convincing melodies and harmonies in the right contexts, especially if we can avoid the partials that are most out of tune, the tritone, minor sixth, and perfect fourth. However, in some contexts, we can even accept these. The entire chromatic scale is available starting with the 16th partial, 4 octaves above the fundamental. In order to hear these melodies and harmonies distinctly, we need to use rather low tones, because their harmonics lie in a comfortable region for our ears. Let me illustrate this with a few examples. Example 1 plays partials 16, 17, 19 of the pitch 7.03, E flat below middle C, 4 times in a row. This states the melody 013, and it is clearly audible. Example 2 plays these same tones as a harmony. They are faded in individually in the same rhythm as example 1, and we can clearly hear this harmony. Example 3 plays the same harmony on the pitch 5.03, 2 octaves below the previous examples, but in this case the lower octave duplications of the 16th partial are included. The fundamental emerges after about 3 seconds and sustains for the rest of the tone. We hear the same harmony as the previous examples, and this sequence is repeated 3 times. Example 4 plays the same partial sequence, but this time the partials are attacked individually. The pitch is 8.09, A440. This creates the impression of both a melody and a harmony. Example 5 plays a more complicated harmony, 0368, the dominant 7th chord. Partials 16, 19, 22, and 26 state the harmony at the beginning, followed by 3 octave duplications, partials 8, 11, and 13. I think we can hear this harmony, but the fundamental 6.07 G2 does not emerge. This example uses both the tritone and the minor sixth, but we can still accept the harmony even though those partials are considerably out of tune. Example 6 plays an A-flat major triad, 5.08, A-flat 1, with all the partials in sequence, 16, 20, 24, 8, 10, 12, 4, 5, 6, 2, 3, 1, stated twice. This clearly has a major triad quality to it, and the fundamental emerges after about 3 seconds. Example 7 plays an A minor triad, 5.09, A1, using partials 16, 19, 21, 24, and the lower octave duplications of 16 and 24. While the minor triad is not as apparent as the major triad in the previous example, it does have that feel, and is clearly a very different sound. Example 8 plays the harmony 0 on 4 on D3, 7.02, in a similar manner to the previous two tones, using partials 16, 17, 20, and their lower octave duplications. The fundamental emerges a little later than with the previous tones. To reinforce the minor second, the 17th partial is stated 4 times in the sequence. Example 9 plays an even more complicated harmony, the pentachord 02358. The partial sequence starts 16, 18, 19, 21, and 26, but then goes on to include almost all the overtones up to 26. The only ones missing are 24 and 25. This creates an impression that starts with this rather complicated harmony, but then goes on to create a complex timbre-changing sound. The first half of example 10 plays the harmony 0-4-5-7 as individual harmonics, but then it goes on to include a transposition of 0-4-5-7, resulting in a complex timbre-changing sound. The fundamental emerges about halfway through the tone. Example 11 again states the harmony 0-4-5-7, but then repeats the partials to reaffirm this is the only harmony present. The timbre still changes constantly. Example 12 plays the pentachord 0-2-4-5-7 on an E-flat 1, 5.03, the first 5 notes of an E-flat major scale. The pattern is repeated, reinforcing this harmony. The fundamental doesn't emerge until about 5 seconds into the tone. The timbre constantly changes, but in a coherent, harmony-reinforcing manner. I hope that these examples demonstrate to you the power and effectiveness of overtone melodies and harmonies. Let me conclude with a guide to my composition Harmonic Fantasy number 7. The composition is in 14 sections, each lasting 36 seconds. The tempo is 80 beats per minute, and the total duration is 8 minutes and 33 seconds. The entire piece is based on overtone melodies and harmonies, as the above examples have shown. Figure 3, the table below, is a summary of the materials in each section. In order to allow high overtones to dominate the surface of the piece, only the notes below C above middle C, spanning a 4-octave range, are used. The overtone melodies and harmonies used all state the harmony of the immediate context, that is to say, the notes that appear in each measure. In figure 3 below, this is indicated by the letter H. The piece begins with all of the notes in octave 7 below middle C, playing only the overtones that support the harmony. In the first section, the lowest partial is 16. In the second, the lowest is 8. The second section introduces the octave below the opening, and in the third section, the 3 lowest octaves are used. Fundamental frequencies of any of the notes do not emerge until the fourth section. In the fourth section, the partials go down to the fundamental, allowing fundamental frequencies to emerge. However, the overtones just support the individual harmonies. In the opening 5 sections, only tones that fade the harmonics in and out are used. In the sixth section, individually attacked harmonics begin to appear. These two instruments, labeled F for fading and A for attacking, are the only ones used in the piece. In the eighth section, all harmonics of the tones are used, resulting in complex timbre changes. Nevertheless, the beginnings of the notes employ just the partials that emphasize the harmony, so that we always hear that element as a prominent aspect of the sound. Starting in the ninth section, the attacking partials are doubled in speed, and in the 10th section, which is the climax of the piece, the fading instrument returns. From this point on, only the partials that emphasize the harmony are used. For further information on this topic, I would refer you to my article, Structuring Spectra in Electroacoustic Music in Organized Sound, Volume 28, Issue 3, which is at the link shown on the screen.